72 hours. That's all it took for Claressa Shields to dismantle her own legacy on live camera, and she did it while smiling. Strip this interview to the bone, and what you find underneath isn't a boxer defending her crown, it's a woman sprinting through a burning house yelling that the fire doesn't exist. Melissa Ford sat across from her, nodding like a dashboard bobblehead, while Claressa rewrote history in real time. And somewhere in Brooklyn, Amanda Serrano was probably watching the circus with a receipt printer warming up. Because here is the fracture line nobody on that couch wanted to step near. The headline Claressa keeps recycling, first female boxer to pull $1 million purse, isn't just stretched. It's fabricated timeline. It's a calendar trick. It's the kind of lie that only works if your audience refuses to Google. Pull the layers back slowly, because this one deserves forensic hands. Claressa Shields walked into that Spotify sit-down wearing confidence like armor, but the armor had holes the size of April 2022. That's the month Amanda Serrano collected her $1 million check for the Katie Taylor fight at Madison Square Garden. April, spring, tulips blooming. Claressa's $1 million night, October, autumn, leaves falling. 6 whole months after Amanda already shattered the ceiling, kicked the glass around the room, and posted the receipt for every woman in the sport to witness. But Claressa stood on that platform, looked into Melissa's eyes, and claimed the crown Amanda Serrano was already wearing. That's not a misremembering, that's a deliberate, manufactured origin story. And the nerve it took to say it out loud while cameras rolled is the kind of nerve that eventually writes its own eulogy. And here is where the narrative implodes for Claressa. Amanda Serrano didn't whisper her record. She told Fat Joe on film the entire backstory. How her manager, Jordan, demanded the announcement. How the $1 million arrived first. How Katie Taylor's team had to scramble to match it because the champion can't be outpaid by the contender. That's documented. That's archived. That's press release, podcast audio, and camera footage. Claressa's version? A sentence, a smirk, a gamble that nobody in her audience would open a second cab. This is the entire engine of Claressa Shields at this point in her career. Bank on the fact that her supporters don't do homework, flood the algorithm with her voice, and hope the volume drowns out the receipts. The problem is, the receipts are louder every single day. Rewind the tape to the part where Melissa Ford admits out of her own mouth that her first encounter with Claressa wasn't in a boxing ring, wasn't on ESPN, wasn't at the Olympics. Her first introduction was through the blogs. The same blogs Claressa now pretends she's above. The same gossip ecosystem Claressa dove into headfirst the moment she got tangled up with Papoose. Melissa Ford is a former video vixen. She lived through the Remy and Papoose golden era. She watched that couple become hip-hop royalty. And now she's sitting 3 feet from the woman widely accused of trying to dismantle that marriage from the inside. The optics alone should have been uncomfortable. Instead, Melissa nodded, smiled, threw softballs, and let Claressa launder her reputation through a microphone. Zoom into that moment where Claressa tries to turn her niece content into a victim narrative. She wants us to believe she was just spending spring break, riding skateboards, posting wholesome family clips, and the mean internet ambushed her for no reason. Pump the brakes on that fantasy. The videos that actually circulated weren't sweet aunt-niece bonding. One of them shows Claressa coaching her niece through profanity like it's a vocabulary lesson. Another shows her threatening to pop the child on camera. A third shows Claressa on a live stream trying to cuss out her audience while her niece walks around in wet pants, completely ignored because the performance was more important than the parenting. That's not the internet being cruel, that's the internet doing what cameras were invented for, showing the truth frame by frame. Claressa filmed the evidence against herself and then blamed the people who watched it. Here is the mechanism underneath all of this, and once you see it, you cannot unsee it. Claressa Shields does not want privacy. Claressa Shields does not want peace. Claressa Shields wants the oxygen of controversy, because controversy is the only fuel her celebrity actually runs on. She can't sell out arenas on boxing alone. She can't push streams on music alone. She couldn't get daytime TV magnetism like Venus or Serena, couldn't pull generational reverence like Layla Ali, couldn't capture the rising star electricity of Coco Gauff. The only door that cracked open for her was the scandal door, and she didn't just walk through it. She kicked it off the hinges and moved furniture in. The Papoose entanglement was her real debut. The blogs were her real championship belt. And now that the honeymoon glow has rotted into public exhaustion, she wants to pretend the boxing resume was the headline all along. press play on the next lie she floated. Claressa insists she was already viral before Papoose, already trending, already being featured on Shade Room and Hollywood Unlocked. That's the moment Melissa should have tilted her head. Because the only reason Shade Room posts Claressa Shields in the first place is because of the married man wrapped around her orbit. Outside of boxing-specific corners of the internet, nobody was crafting headlines about Claressa's outfit choices, her relationship timeline, her friend circle, her 30 looks for 30 photo shoot. That ecosystem activated the second Remy Ma dropped the receipts. That's the origin point. That's the 0 hour. Everything Claressa has built since is constructed on top of that foundation, and she can repaint the walls all she wants. The blueprint is still permanent. Examine the damage control she attempted next. Claressa pivoted into her boxing accolades like a life rest: Olympic gold at 17, Olympic gold at 21, MMA experiments, the upcoming challenge against Lauren Price in the UK. But pay attention to how vague those claims became under pressure. She said she challenged a girl with an Olympic gold medal. She did not say there was a signed contract. She did not say there was a date. She did not say there was a venue. She did not say there was a promoter locked in. A challenge thrown on a podcast and a fight actually booked are two very different animals. And Claressa knows the difference. She's just counting on the audience not to notice the sleight of hand. Meanwhile, Papoose himself said on DJ Vlad's couch that Claressa has 2 more fights to complete this year. 2 more fights on a 2-year contract? Which means the math isn't mathing, the schedule isn't scheduling, and the so-called dominance she's claiming sounds a whole lot like a career in quiet stall mode. Pick apart the MMA detour while you're here. Claressa wants the undefeated mythology to stick, but the Hannah Gabriel's knockdown exists. That footage exists. The loss in MMA exists. You cannot stand on a platform shouting about being untouchable when there's camera proof of you touching the canvas. And the cherry on top, she refuses to fight the opponents fans actually want. Real competition, marquee matchups, the kind of bouts that would cement a generational boxer's legacy. They're conspicuously absent from her calendar. She keeps recycling opponents she already beat, or opponents positioned below her weight class in public relevance, because the illusion of dominance is easier to maintain when you handpick the mirror. Now, drag this scene to the part about women's sports being disrespected. Claressa tried to wrap herself in that flag, and the flag refused to fit. She claimed the WNBA and women's boxing get erased when something negative happens. Except the WNBA just smashed viewership records. Angel Reese is a brand phenomenon. Angel Wilson just collected another ring while breaking statistical walls. Salary conversations move the needle in ways that would have been unthinkable 5 years ago. Women's boxing, meanwhile, has had a full renaissance led by Amanda Serrano, Alicia Baumgartner, Shadesha Green, and the whole MVP promotions roster. The erasure Claressa feels is not industry-wide. It is personal, it is local, and it is self-inflicted. She is being erased from the conversation because she chose to become the mistress story instead of the champion story. That was a decision. Decisions have gravity. Here is the autopsy of the real failure, and this is the part her supporters don't want to hear. Claressa Shields bet the house on the Papoose brand. She believed Papoose was a rap heavyweight with the industry pull to launch her into dual-threat celebrity, boxer by day, rap princess by night, Remy Ma's replacement by any narrative necessary. The calculation assumed Papoose still moved culture. The calculation assumed his executive touch was magic. The calculation assumed the internet would root for the new couple the way it rooted for the original. Every single one of those assumptions detonated in her face. Papoose's solo projects went platinum in quotation marks. Claressa's music releases are streaming into silence. The clubs aren't spinning her records. Radio stations don't know her catalog exists. The audience didn't adopt her as Remy's Caccini tale. They adopted her as Remy's cautionary tale. And then the universe sent Maserati Rob with receipts that peeled the operation open like a can. Claressa tried to paint that man as a liar, a predator, a threat. Maserati Rob answered with video. Him and Claressa arriving at a strip club together. Him and Claressa spending Labor Day together. Thanksgiving.
Christmas. Text messages dropping her location, asking what was taking him so long to pull up. That archive alone nuked the entire Clean Girl rebrand she was attempting. You cannot call somebody a stranger when the timestamps say you spent every holiday of that calendar year in his passenger seat. Maserati Rob didn't just expose a fling, he exposed an entire contradiction of the curated narrative, and the internet ate it for breakfast. Pair that eruption with Remy Ma's Sheather Part 2, and the structural damage becomes irreversible. The first Sheather was hip-hop's surgery. The sequel was a eulogy delivered in couplets, and Claressa was front and center in the casket metaphor. Once Remy laid out the text messages, the side chick choreography, the pick-me-sure receipts, the public opinion swung permanently. Every subsequent podcast appearance Claressa books is damage control disguised as promotion. The Melissa Ford interview wasn't a celebration of her boxing rise. It was a crisis management shift dressed up in Spotify branding. And Melissa, intentionally or not, handed her a microphone to keep digging. Shift to the micro-lies scattered through the rest of the interview because they tell the same story the $1 million lie told. She said she's been the girl in her lane forever. The definition of forever apparently shrank because her pro debut was November 2016, which makes her professional career less than a decade old. She said people came for her content because they were haters. The receipts show people came for her content because the content was disturbing. She said her celebrity is easy because she just does what she wants. The public record shows her celebrity is easy because she hijacked a scandal that wasn't hers to begin with. Every sentence Claressa spoke on that couch contained either a half-truth, a shift of blame, or a quiet rewrite of documented fact. And Melissa never once interrupted the surgery. Examine why Melissa Ford, of all people, was placed across from her. Nandi from Spotify, according to Melissa's own admission, curated this matchup for the soundtrack of a Champion series. Melissa said she did her homework, watched The Fire Within, prepared to engage with the athlete. The moment of truth came when she accidentally called the film The Fire Inside instead. Small mistake, enormous tell. Because The Fire Within is the Ryan Destiny-led biopic about Claressa's life. And if you cannot remember the correct title of the movie about the woman sitting in front of you, it confirms the exact accusation Claressa pretended to rise above. That nobody really knows her for boxing. They know her for Papoose. They know her for the scandal. The movie was an afterthought, and the title slipped because the title was never the headline. Here is where the whole illusion collapses into one sentence. Claressa Shields built a celebrity on a scandal, tried to upgrade the scandal into a love story, then tried to upgrade the love story into a legacy, and now wants the public to forget the scandal ever launched the whole thing. That sequence does not work. Audiences are not amnesiac. The internet does not forget. Every interview she gives becomes another data point in the larger investigation into her, into Papoose, into Caldesia, into the rotating cast of alleged side situations orbiting this marriage. The scrutiny is not going away. It is multiplying. And every time Claressa opens a podcast door hoping for rehabilitation, she walks out with a fresh set of contradictions trailing behind her. Factor in the business blowback. The Zeus Network ambitions are stalled. The music rollouts are ghost towns. The brand deals she imagined would pour in after going public with Papoose never materialized at scale. The boxing calendar is thinner than her promoters want to admit. Even the challenge to Lauren Price, which should have been a marquee announcement, came out sounding like a Twitter taunt dressed in press clothes. A real fight announcement has posters, tickets, broadcast partners, and press tours. A podcast challenge has a clip. Claressa delivered a clip and called it a career move. The market sees through it. Zoom out to the cultural chessboard one more time. The reason Claressa supporters keep repeating the same tired talking points, Olympic gold, undefeated, first female this, first female that, is because those lines are the only footholds left. The relationship narrative is radioactive. The music angle is a dead end. The reality TV dream is on life support. The only territory left is the resume, and even the resume has cracks now that Amanda Serrano's April 2022 $1 million purse is part of the public record. That crack is not going to close. That crack is the exhibit the entire case rests on, and the more Claressa insists on the false first, the wider the crack gets.
Ask yourself the real question Melissa Ford should have asked, but didn't. If Claressa Shields were truly the greatest female boxer of all time, why is the conversation around her dominated by her personal entanglements instead of her ring record? Because legacies that are earned don't need this much narration. The greatest of all time conversation happens organically around Serena Williams. It happens organically around Layla Ali in boxing history. It happens organically around the athletes whose work does the talking. Claressa has to manually stuff her accolades into every sentence because nobody else is willing to carry them for her. That's the tell. That's the diagnosis. That's the difference between a champion and a chronicler of her own myth. Layer in the most recent twist, the reality that Remy Ma is not negotiating. She is not performing for cameras. She is not returning for a reality show reconciliation arc. Remy Ma put Papoose out, dropped the documentation, and moved forward. That permanence is precisely what rattles Claressa every time. The fantasy version of the scandal ended with Papoose divorcing Remy, marrying Claressa, and the public crowning a new hip-hop couple. The real version ends with Papoose crashing on couches, hopping on buddy passes to visit Claressa, and Claressa managing the optics of a relationship that never actually graduated into legitimacy. Every podcast she books is a desperate attempt to spin that reality into something photogenic. It isn't working. Watch what happens next, because this story is nowhere near finished. Maserati Rob still has archive. Remy Ma still has pen. The investigative community online still has bandwidth. Every layer of this onion has another layer, and Claressa's strategy of saturating interviews with rehearsed accolades will eventually collide with another receipt drop she cannot spin. The smart play would have been to log off, train quietly, book a legitimate high-profile fight, and let the boxing speak. The loud play was to run toward every microphone and hope volume equals truth. She chose loud. Loud leaves footprints, and the footprints are being cataloged by an audience that does not miss. Register this final observation before the credits roll on this saga. The Claressa Shields arc is no longer a boxing story. It is a case study in what happens when an athlete confuses notoriety with greatness. The former is cheap and borrowed. The latter is earned and permanent. Amanda Serrano, whether Claressa wants to admit it or not, has the permanent credit for that April 2022 $1 million purse. That record belongs to her. History will record it. Podcasts cannot unrecord it. And every time Claressa grabs a microphone to reclaim it, she is actually just underlining Amanda's signature in bold. Which drops us at the question that truly matters. How many more of these podcast appearances can Claressa survive before the contradictions outpace the comeback attempts? How many more Melissa Ford-style conversations where the host either cannot or will not challenge the falsehoods before the public tunes out entirely? Because the audience Claressa is counting on, the one that doesn't Google, doesn't cross-check, and doesn't care, is shrinking by the day. The audience that does fact-check, does pull clips, does build timelines on TikTok and YouTube and Twitter threads, is the audience writing the final draft of her legacy. And that audience is not on her side. Drop your verdict in the comments. Do you think Claressa Shields can ever rebuild the boxing narrative? Or did the scandal era permanently rewrite her Wikipedia? Stay sharp, stay skeptical, and stay tuned, because the next receipt is always closer than these celebrities think. Circle back to the architecture of the interview itself, because it reveals the whole con. A genuine champion sitting with a journalist would welcome tough questions about contradictions, because contradictions are the stress test of truth. Claressa did not welcome tough questions. She choreographed the entire sit-down. She controlled the rhythm. She redirected every pivot point toward rehearsed talking points. Olympic gold at 17, Olympic gold at 21, history making this, barrier breaking that. When Melissa brushed near the relationship question, Claressa instantly deflected into a speech about how boxing is not negative. That pivot wasn't organic. That pivot was a trained reflex. You can see the media coaching fingerprints on every sentence. And still, underneath the choreography, the lie about the $1 million purse slipped through because some lies are so embedded in the origin story, they come out on autopilot. Examine who benefits from this rewrite attempt. Not women's boxing, because women's boxing already has its real pioneers, and Amanda Serrano's purse record is a load-bearing beam in the modern structure. Not the next generation of female fighters, because falsifying history distorts the playbook they need to study. Not even Papoose, because Claressa's persistent spotlight on herself keeps dragging him back into headlines he cannot afford, given the state of his music career and the cooling of his industry relevance. The only person this rewrite benefits is Claressa's personal brand management short-term. And short-term wins built on long-term fiction always collect interest eventually. Revisit the moment Claressa said she's been the girl in her field forever. That word forever is doing Olympic-level gymnastics in that sentence. Forever for Claressa is approximately 9 professional years. Forever for Amanda Serrano is closer to 17. Forever for Laila Ali is a 2-decade shadow that still darkens every conversation about women's boxing greatness. Forever for Christy Martin is a legacy that literally created the commercial market female boxers now compete inside. Claressa borrowed a word that belongs to her predecessors and tried to wear it like a custom fit. The word rejected her. The word always does when it isn't earned. Tie this to the larger pattern across Black women in entertainment and sports right now, because context matters. Real excellence is having a renaissance moment. Angel Reese is converting controversy into economic power. Sha'Carri Richardson is rewriting sprint history. Simone Biles is redefining the word comeback. Aja Wilson is stacking championships like dominoes. Coco Gauff is becoming a generational tennis icon in real time. All of those women have one thing in common. The work is louder than the gossip, and Claressa Shields sits outside that energy because her gossip has been louder than her work for at least 2 calendar years. That is not a conspiracy against her. That is a self-authored problem, and the only editor who can rewrite it is Claressa herself, through silence, through training, through actual marquee fights, not through another Spotify couch appearance. Close the file on one unavoidable truth. The April versus October gap between Amanda Serrano's purse and Claressa Shields' purse is not a technicality. It is a 6-month canyon nobody can renovate into a plateau. History stamped that check, time-stamped, notarized by the internet, archived forever. The next time Claressa repeats the lie, just remember which month came first on the calendar God gave us.